creeps! I'm here to welcome you to Comic-Con, the greatest, grandest, goofiest gathering of comic book nuts in the civilized world. I myself came to fame on the pages of EC Comics, thanks to Bill Gaines of Mad Magazine fame. You could say Bill was mad about me. It would be a lie, but you could say it. Right now, get ready for everything you ever wanted to know about Tales from the Crypt, but were too disgusted to ask. I've got some nauseatingly knowledgeable know-it-alls for you who will fill your foolishly frightened heads with fiendish facts on scary scenarios from our palpitationist past. It's Q&A time, creeps, so without further ado, boils and ghouls, here's our panel!
Thank you. What are we going to do? Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Jack Wall. At least I think I'm Jack Wall. I'm president of Tales from the Crypt. But I try to get over that if I can. Thank you. I'm going to introduce you to these wonderful, wonderful colleagues of mine who have made great contributions to an incredible property. Tell you a little bit about them, and then we want you. We'd love you to ask us all the questions you've been dying to ask about Tales from the Crypt. Chip Selby, a wonderful documentary filmmaker, recently put together, wrote, directed, edited, produced Tales from the Crypt, from the comic books to television.
I wonder if anyone's ever done the horror comic controversy, because I knew of EC Comics and I was a big fan, having discovered them when I was a teenager, and I thought, now that's a great story. I mean, not only would that be fun, but it's such a great story because you have this dramatic controversy and the Senate hearings and all of that stuff.
This man is Todd Masters. Todd is one of the premier makeup special effects people in movies and television.
I started in Crypt at the very, very beginning. They thought I was an art department guy, which was kind of funny. I got hired by some friends through the art department to make the actual Tales from the Crypt, the actual Crypt set where the Crypt Keeper would play. Well, season 3, we did an episode called Carrion Death with Kyle MacLachlan. We had to make a puppet vulture, and of course, in classic Tales from the Crypt fashion, we had to make this animatronic vulture that would be, eating and plucking out Kyle's eyeball, and had to, match the real one that we had. And that's not an easy thing to do in 4 days.
In the far end there is the one and only voice of the Crypt Keeper, John Kassir.
I'm John Kassir. I'm the voice of the Crypt Keeper.
Having him come from the comic book Crypt Keeper to a television character. But John brought such life, if you'll forgive the pun, to an undead character.
I hope you like shish kebab. Damn! It isn't ready yet. Bob's still moving.
Sitting next to John is A.L. Katz, Alan Katz, a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant writer, producer.
The intention was it was going to be 13 and out. And we were, I think, able to deliver a show that was probably as good as the first couple of episodes in the first season. The third season, I think, was supposed to be its last season, originally, as we started to do it.
Seated to my right is a man named Digby Deal, noted author, critic, another brilliant. The guys on this panel are just unbelievable. I went to Joel and Dick were kind of the managing partners, and I said I had an idea to do a coffee table book. And I thought doing a compilation, an archival book of all that took place with Tales from the Crypt would be a worthwhile thing to do. But who should do it? Who should put it together? Who should research it? Who should write it? Who should oversee it? Who should get the right people to have it published?
So they came to me wanting to create a book like this. Mainly, they only talked really about the television show. My initial reaction was negative. I said, no, I'm not interested in doing a coffee table book that's basically just some kind of a fan magazine for the television show. Thanks, but no thanks. Well, of course,
when you say that to a Hollywood producer, that makes them want you all the more.
At any rate, Digby put together, just happened to have it handy, this incredible Tales from the Crypt book. It's an amazing book. Digby, why don't you just give us kind of an overview of the property itself?
Well, thank you, Jack. It is true. Tales from the Crypt is an idea that wouldn't die, quite literally. And it was the brainchild, of course, of William Gaines. Yes, indeed, please, you know, the creator of EC Comics.
Well, sadly enough, I never had the opportunity to talk to Bill Gaines, who died before I had the chance to meet him. But I certainly talked to everybody around him. And the story was that he was an avid fan of the television series. He only lived to see the first 3 seasons. So this 3rd season, really quite a remarkable season, not only because of all the extraordinary people who were in it, but because Bill Gaines was so into it himself. Bill Gaines was kind of a King Comus. He was a guy who just made everybody laugh. He made his living with laughter.
So that was actually one of the things I hoped to do in the documentary, was to enlighten those people who knew of Tales from the Crypt as a television series, to let them know that there was a backstory to it, and a very interesting backstory.
For the comics to be referenced in Tales from the Crypt, it became really important in a couple different ways. One is that we always wanted to tribute the source material, because again, Tales from the Crypt was a different thing altogether. There was a certain texture to the stories. You know, they're always sticky, they're always gooey, and I think the comic book covers always kind of represented that.
I would say that many of the episodes were faithful to the original story. Some were a little bit more faithful than others. So some of them really used the panels as storyboards for all of the shots in the show, or most of the shots in the show. And others kind of, you know, the story was old and needed to be updated, so they used that as sort of the springboard and jumped from there.
What I think is very interesting, though, is that the comic books were basically put out of business by the Kefauver Committee. They decided that the comic books were the cause of juvenile delinquency.
An archbishop up in Boston decided that the real problem with juvenile delinquency and the way to end it is comic books, right? Which now seems like such an absurdity, but somehow in the 1950s it all worked. They really believed it.
So the 50s were a very strange time for a lot of people. So things were going on, and we were sort of looking for answers.
They had some problems with the times because people thought those comic books were affecting teenagers. Sound familiar? You know, it never goes away.
We keep wanting to find the cause of this problem, we say juvenile delinquency, and we think that it's some aspect of popular culture, but even when we get rid of those aspects of popular culture, juvenile delinquency doesn't go away.
Lights! Camera! Action!
It's wonderful how many people that Tales from the Crypt keeps reaching, millions and millions of people in all of its various forms. And now in DVD, it's going to reach millions more.
The amount of comic book projects, properties, characters have become feature films.
This was a character with tremendous, franchise potential, and Jack was the one who was going to be responsible for exploiting all the potential franchise possibilities.
There's no reason that the Crypt Keeper can't be for Halloween what Santa Claus is for Christmas. It's a tall order, but we're getting there. We're working on it. No, right now it's a given. John is the only voice and the best voice in the world to do this character, but there was a time when this character was, forgive me, coming to life, so to speak. And I think, John, why don't you talk about that day with
Sure. So I was excited, being a horror fan myself, and you know, when I got invited, because they only invited a few people to come down and audition for the part of the Crypt Keeper, I had collected the comic books as a kid, so I was really excited about it. Of course, my mother used to take them away from me and throw them out. I consistently remind her how much they'd be worth if I could own them and sign them now. But she thought it was, you know, turning me into a delinquent. So
she was right.
She was, and now I get paid for it. So, but so when I got invited to go down, of course I was going to get a chance to go down to Kevin Yeager's studio.
The character visually was put together by Kevin Yeager and Robert Zemeckis and Joel and all the guys. A little bit of everyone made some kind of a contribution.
Early on, we didn't get as much chance to cut the Crypt Keeper loose, because the puppet originally, you don't, when they start out with a show, they don't have as big of a budget, so the puppet couldn't be quite as developed in terms of the amount of motors that they could put in them, and it was very costly and very time consuming. They just didn't have the time and the money to do it.
We didn't really want it to be that way. We always wanted it to have that bing bang boom, but the puppet couldn't move fast enough to keep up with, the comic timing that I originally wanted to do it. So we just adjusted the attitude for it, and it worked.
So Kevin took me in the back room. He had a casting director there and a little boom box type recorder, and gave me a few pieces of copy.
And he said, feel free to improvise with it. And of course, my mind went to all these dirty little things like, have I got a bone for you? Stuff like that. And I started goofing around, and I had him laughing. And the next day, he had me down to the set, and I was doing it for Richard Donner and Joel Silver, which was like really scary for me. But these guys were some of the biggest heavyweights in the business, but they immediately put me at ease, going, we love what you're doing, and the next day they put me to work.
There you have it. Fire! Yes! Yes! Oh, yes!
Anyway, Chip did this wonderful documentary based on Tales from the Crypt, the comic book time of the 50s. Is there anything you want to tell the folks about that experience?
I came to it as a second-generation fan of the comic books, and then, of course, when the TV series was on, was a fan of that. What's interesting is that Tales from the Crypt sort of has two fan bases: the people who love the comic books, and some people who don't even know that the show was based on comic books. And I found that a little surprising while I was doing the documentary. People would ask what I was working on, and I would tell them they knew Tales from the Crypt as being a series on HBO, but they didn't know that it was based on comic books from the 50s.
It is such a rich property. I think the world of horror and scare never goes away. We get scared, we put our hands over our eyes, but we leave a little space so we can see what we're being scared about.
We all have gone through that where we're watching something on television or in the movies, and you see the main character going to the closet, and the bad guy's in there, and you're like, no, don't go in there, don't go in there. And we've all done that, or we've all seen that. So I think we all just, we love to be scared. We get a thrill out of it, and horror movies or horror television or horror comic books is one way to experience that.
I don't remember scare and horror ever being as popular as it is right. It never goes away. It's, the curve goes up, it goes down, but it never disappears. And I think in the category of that genre of scare and horror, you got to go a long way to find anything better than Tales from the Crypt.
Because of the way that the show was done, there is a timeless quality to it. It will not get old. And that's why I think it continues to be relevant, because the message is universal, and of course the way in which it was delivered was timeless.
You can watch television from 50 years ago, and somehow it still holds up to some degree. Tales from the Crypt will be around forever, in my opinion. I hope I am.